It's a different feeling. You know, when someone's having the worst day of their lives, and then you're there to take their picture. I don't like that feeling. But when something is happening, I feel the need that I should be going out and documenting it. But I'm not a breaking news photographer. And making myself seen, I don't ever try to steal a picture. That's where it differs. Conversation of consent differs. My name is Rita Kabalan. I am 48 years old and I'm a photographer. Photography to me is holding on to memories, and the other one is documenting, to make that news travel. If we're not documenting, then things get lost, then the truth gets lost. Most of the things I photograph are things that have to do with social issues, after effects of social disasters or conflicts. They're stories of people, you know? I consider myself a very confident person, but a very insecure photographer, but I don't like to change it. Being insecure actually makes me go the extra mile. It makes me go back. It makes me check the photos. Did I represent this person enough? I was born in Beirut. My family's from the north, from a village called Mazrat al-Tafeh. We emigrated to the US when I was 10. I was there for the majority of my life until the end of 2017, where I moved back to Lebanon. I wanted to be a photojournalist, but I wanted to focus on my country. I wanted to be in a place where I can speak the language. I didn't want to be a parachute journalist. I didn't want to be traveling a lot. I wanted to have a base and a home in the same place that I was covering. Feel I'm a local journalist, a local photojournalist. Not to get too heavy, but as a kid, I never liked the news because it changed the mood of my father. But in 2006, I started listening.
Israeli tanks roll into southern Lebanon.
Israeli soldiers, tanks, and airplanes were fighting deep inside Lebanon.
Much like they've been doing in Gaza.
The first layer that got me into even wanting to listen to news was the war between Israel and Hezbollah.
العسكرية الإسرائيلية التي اعتدت على بنيتنا التحتية
أصبح قضية دولية في العالم.
Israel had enormous legitimacy from the world to attack.
The UN Security Council calling for an end to the fighting. But despite this, the IDF continues to fight southern Lebanon.
Obsessive. I can't really describe it any other way. I was obsessed with the news. I couldn't really pay attention to work. I was in the US at the time. I was far from my country and I was watching all of these things happen. And I think that was the first, I would say, wake-up call. Each story has a different effect. When I was photographing the October Revolution in Lebanon in 2019, it was like as if the people were getting to know each other for the first time. It was a love story. It was euphoric. It was, I was never tired. I was going, to the street every day. I was photographing every day.
جوا بتطلع فيه هيك عيونك حلوين اسم الله. إسرائيل ما فيكم تطروها رصاصة بس بتطروا الشعب أوقات. روح شوف الفلسطينيين كيف شجرة زيتونة بيموتوا لأجلها. نحن وطن وأرض، إذا ما عندك أرض ما عندك وطن.
أحسنت يا حجة.
خلصنا والله العظيم خلصنا.
الله يبارك فيك.
الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام.
I feel like I'm speaking for many Lebanese. Lebanon feels like a child. Lebanon feels like it's been hijacked. Lebanon feels like it needs nurturing. Lebanon feels abandoned.
سمع
The situations do impact all of us, I think, day to day. Of course, looking back at those photos, it's depressing because, you know, where we are now in the country. My first memory of photography was a photo album that my mom had of her family. And I would look at it. I would look at it constantly and I would memorize. This is my aunt and that's her name. This is my uncle and that's his name. And they live far away, but I made the connection that someone can live far away, but we know who they are. I could get to know them through a photograph. Just thought, oh, they're so attractive. I didn't know like what the family was going through as immigrants or what the trauma that they had been through, and that's something I found out later when I went to the US. My second one that I remember that really is seared in my mind. As a kid, I mean, I'm gonna guess this was very early 80s. I was sitting in my mom's lap and we were at her aunt's house. Across from her was a friend of her aunt's who was sitting, and she had a necklace with 4 photos. You could think of lockets, but they were open, so you could see photos in those circles. One young man and one young woman had dark hair, one young man had light hair, so I thought they were the band ABBA. I assumed that this woman really likes ABBA. But then my mom asked her, and she said, those are my children. They were killed in a bombing, all at the same time. It hit me that she's carrying these photos and now they're like, she had children and now they're only photos that she carries around her neck all the time. I felt it was her space, you know, like it was her space to tell about it. I always like to think of her when I am about to do a story that's very deep, where it's like, am I at the ABBA layer or am I at the layer of the heart? So, you know, like she's kind of like that compass.
على مدى 3 أيام استمرت المجزرة التي نفذها الاحتلال الإسرائيلي.
لحد هلا في ريحة بتمر من وراء ريحة القتلة.
One of the stories that I worked on that I think was very hard for me emotionally, it was the 40th year of the Sabra and Shatila massacre. It was portraits of them with their words. As someone who didn't live very far from the Sabra and Shatila massacre, I heard very conflicting things as to what was actually happening. And there was so much dehumanization to the people who lived in Sabra and Shatila. Going back to talk to people that survived it, it's still different when you, as a journalist, you're interviewing the person, you're hearing it firsthand, and they're telling you this is who it was who massacred people. And then just a few kilometers away, we were hearing that like these are our heroes. And then, you know, I find out like, oh, this isn't what happened. We don't want that truth to get lost. I think what's missing in Lebanon is truth and reconciliation among so many different communities. And the community I lived in was hearing something while another community was being massacred. I feel I have a lot of emotional strength. It's much more difficult for the people that I am photographing than it is for me. I can go home and then I can seek that support, but the person that I photographed is still living through what they're living through. People tell me, you know, why would you go there? It's dangerous. How did you know that it was dangerous if someone didn't tell you? You know, how did you find out this truth, or how did you get this sense if someone didn't tell you? Most of the editors I've worked with have respected the story. They work well with local journalists. I've published with a local publication called The Public Source, Masdar Am, an independent Lebanese publication. Other stories I've done with Middle East Eye, with Al Jazeera English. Documenting stories, it's a way of storytelling. If we're not documenting, then maybe movements don't take shape. This is why it's important to tell these stories. When I do stories like that, then I tend to do other stories that are still close, but they're more lighter. I did a project on balconies, and it was because balconies are beautiful and people's plants and people's portraits on their balconies, but there's always a political angle, you know? With all the new developments that have taken over the city, there are no balconies. There's glass, you know, because we're keeping the noise out, we're keeping the dust out, we're keeping the pollution out. So we keep band-aiding these problems instead of taking care of the foundation of the problem. I did a project on Mune that my family loved, obviously, because it was about my aunt and my cousin, and it took place in my village. So they're proud that, oh, you know, there's pictures from our village and there's Amti Amalin, you know? But again, there's a few lines in the story that say Lebanon is going through a financial crisis. You know, we don't have electricity, so a lot of people are going back to the old ways of preserving food. You know, my aunt's fridge at this time wasn't working for probably 8 hours a day. What's happening now is very similar to what happened in the 80s of people leaving. The project that I'm focusing on right now is the emigration of young people in Lebanon. There are no jobs for them. They're finding any way out to leave. The people that leave feel like they're abandoning, but at the same time, if they don't leave, then who's gonna care for their parents? My family's been displaced. I'm seeing it happening to a lot of other families. It's a story of everybody. A country should have jobs for its people, should have security for its people, and we don't. So it's a cycle. I think it's a cycle of violence, honestly. You know, pushing people out of their homes, out of their countries, displacing families, separating families from their loved ones. There is an impression that photojournalists, they're giving. I believe it's an important job, but it's not like a volunteer job. It's not an activism job, it's a job. No one is giving anyone anything by being a journalist. Like there's, you know, you're giving voice to the voiceless. That's not journalism. People have agency and people have voices, and we're helping the message, but we're not giving anyone anything. We're actually taking a lot.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
the most intense thing that I've ever faced in this field. 4 days after the Beirut blast, people went down to protest. The security was incredibly violent towards people, from bullets to rubber bullets to tear gas. At one point, they started chasing the crowd, and usually I step back and I look them in the eye, but this time for some reason I felt like I had to run because it was so violent.
We are not leaving. It's either them or us in this country.
One of the very few times I put my camera on video and I was filming as I was running. I didn't even see what was happening behind me. One of the Jaish ran after me and hit me with his M16. Broke my collarbone.
Did it hold you back بعد كده?
No. I actually went and photographed a funeral while my arm was in a brace.